ask that your suit bring you a great to the wherever you've been. Your vision is better than anything you've seen. Standing where many have suffered and been grieved. Woman, don't bow down. Don't let them silence you.
Sanibonani Makhaya. Today on It's a Feminist Thing, we are discussing the industry of sex. We are talking all manner of transactional relationships, blessers, sugar daddies, and sex work. Joining me in conversation are my fearless, forward, and oh-so feminist co-hosts, Fina Kodisang, Niko Shipambane, and Tando Gumede. Hello and welcome. Hello.
We are ready for this.
It's going to be a hot topic today.
Let's get into it.
Throughout the episode, we go deeper and discuss the numerous ways in which the industry of sex can privilege and punish women. Before have any of you participated or been part of a transactional relationship?
Kgomotso, being a queer woman, obviously, especially in South Africa, the socioeconomics and the opportunities for, education in South Africa are just not the same, especially for women of color, So I've had to compromise in the past. And, I'm very much willing to contribute a lot more than other people are willing to their partners. And I'm also willing to empower and to provide, I think some of my friends have kind of shunned me to say, wow, babes, like, why did you get that? But I understand, so I do it from a place of love and of understanding of the context.
I don't particularly enjoy transactional relationships. I don't think it's fun to fund men or anybody else for that matter. It's unattractive. And I find a certain safety in equality. I don't need anybody to take care of me. And vice versa, I don't want to take care of somebody else. Sometimes you might have to help each other out. You know this industry. Sometimes you're on TV, sometimes you're not. So,
But I remember how in university, first year, straight out of the matric exam room, being independent, living on your own for the first time, young girls will negotiate their own relationships and find their own opportunities to make additional income. We were exposed to the soccer player, businessmen, who will come pick up young girls, go to university and take them out and make them, and have them there as trophies. I, for one, never fit the beauty stereotype that I think blessers want. I don't have a weave. So I was never really the one that was chosen as the trophy, but just subverting those kinds of relationships.
Well, how do you feel about what transpired? You put yourself in the center of like, yes, I was there. I wasn't a chosen one, but I certainly saw how it... Yeah, and with the benefit of hindsight, what's your reflections on that particular time in your life?
Look, I think that transactional relationships are a source of additional income under the circumstances that I was living in, Because we split the rent, we split the electricity bill, and even though I could get some resources from somewhere else, my roommate who I'm sharing a place with, if she can find that money to pay her, share of the electricity bill, then that's exactly what it is, And I will never take away the agency that, young women have to negotiate the terms of their own relationships.
And I think that's why this conversation is important to have. Feminism is about women empowerment. Empowerment means something to everyone, something different to everyone. For others, it means owning self and being able to make things happen for yourself by bringing resources. We all know that we don't have resources equally. If somebody wants to give, why are you saying no to the gift?
And if somebody wants to receive?
And you still have a right to say, I'm taking the gift, but it doesn't mean I owe you something. Because it's realizing that power as well to say, even if I take the gift, I'm
That's
not
where
going
it
to
gets
pay
dodgy.
in any way.
And I get difficulty because bareki tend to have more power than barekwang. Let's check in with our language expert, Ponso Pilani, and translate transactional relationships for us. Oh, Sponsor, welcome back. Moshong rona.
Thank you so much, Kgomotso.
Yo, wait a minute. Before o tla normally ne ke rata hore ke test so ke tetutse. Alright.
Yeah, o tetutse.
Ke tetutse ke utlwa re Setswana sa ka se yang.
Sefo kae?
E ganne ya ka jeno. No, wa bona and which is why you are here. Ka bona. Wait ke Ponso.
Nna ke lekile ganne.
Ka re o sponsor ga tlisa sefatlhego se sentle fela mo.
At least. No, it's transactional relationships ka Setswana ke dikgolagano tsa marato tse di ungwelang tšhelete.
Yo.
O tsena o itse gore ke fa ke malozo bona kapa ke gona le exchange of services or something mara gona le gore gona lo kreyang gona lo o
mongwe tsa letsogo o mongwe tsa loto o mongwe tsa
ha se fela ka tšhelete le credibility we can think about it ka gore ha re lebella nna tota go bua nnete ke nagana fela gore banna ba ka jeko e seng fela ba ka jeko mara banna fela ba batho ba Batswana kapa ba batho ba bantsho ke di gold diggers
ba bantsi banna ba bantsi
ha re ka lebella gore you know, we have really fine black women in this country.
Yes.
And banna ba ko ga ba mo leveling ya rona wa bona.
Guys.
Just by being in relationships ke level up. So gona le transaction ya credibility ya gore like they'll have beautiful babies but
and we don't talk about that.
No, and you can't say it, right? That men in this country actually benefit more from being married.
Tando, what is transactional relationship?
First of all, I need to make a disclaimer. I know nothing about men. I know nothing about having a relationship with a man. I don't know about these things, but I've got some terminologies, especially from rural Natal, of some of the terms that some of the younger women use there to describe like blessers and stuff. So one of the words is dekitafula. So they're taking the term. Slang. This is slang, of course. This is slang Zulu. Course, and then also there's chitimali.
Yes.
Chitimali.
Yes.
The last one that's a bit contentious is uputmadlisa. You know, I'm interested to know what people think of using that word on social media.
And also, though, for men, it's so gendered. Whereas we've just been talking about South African men being such gold diggers. And in 2010, the gold diggers are patriarchy. So it's not like mutating okamusia or exchange the roles. O fita go gae o santsana batla gore o mo apele. Ele wena o tswang forever from a 12-hour day on set. No.
Tell us how you translate this term in your own language. Leave your comments on our social media pages using the hashtag on your screen. Coming up after the break.
Culturally, the blessee relationship was there.
It's a feminist thing, and we're discussing transactional relationships. In South Africa, we call them blessers. Around the world, they're known as sugar daddies, men with deep pockets who use money and gifts in exchange for sexual favors from different people. With us to discuss the impact of unequal relationships and the prevalence of risky sexual behavior amongst young people is Professor Azwihangwisi Mavhandu-Mudzusi, a researcher working at the University of South Africa. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Prof, what were the findings of your research into transactional relationships? And, you know, how does this link itself to toxic masculinity?
Culturally, the blessee relationship was there. In Venda, we have a term called Rufara Tonga, where an old man who is rich will marry a very young girl from a poor family to as a means of socio-economic improvement. Because when that young girl is married, what usually happens, they will take 8 cows to that family. So the family will have a starter. My mother was a Rufara Tonga, married to my father who, my mother is younger than my father's firstborn. So when my father died at old age, I as a firstborn was only 7. And I think my mother was, I don't know, but she looks very young. So this relationship of blesser and blessee, I think they have continuous impact on the life of the individual. In fact, let me start from the beginning. My participants were refugee girls from African countries. Kenya, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Congo, and Ethiopia. So purpose of doing that study was, I've realized that most of them were infected with HIV. Then when I asked, one of them told me that, we have a blesser. For them, they felt that having a blesser is the best option than struggling in South Africa without a shelter, without food. And also, they felt that at least when they have those blessers, most of them end up giving them money for clothes, money for food, accommodation, and also that sense of security. Because people who are with them, they know, this belongs to that big man with a big car. So they become the non-touchable. Unlike those who are not having blessers where people can come and rape them or do whatever.
So the blessees are kind of protected by the fact that of their association with the blesser.
Yes.
But here's the question now, and I'm sure this would apply also to the South African girls, not just refugee girls. But what's the psychological impact of this blesser-blessee relationship, particularly on the blessee?
The first thing is disempowerment. The moment a person have a blesser, it's like selling the soul and selling the independence, because the blesser control their movement. They control who should they talk to. They control how they should dress, how they should eat. Even if they, let's say, maybe the blessee is a university student.
Right.
If the blesser wants that blessee to go somewhere, they don't care whether that girl is supposed to attend the class, whether the girl is supposed to present. They should just be there for the blesser.
In your research, what have you kind of unearthed in terms of the prevalence of transactional relationships within the LGBTQIA+ community?
The blesser-blessee relationship is high, but because of them being not out, even when they have blesser, you find that they are quiet about it, because it usually occurs after 9. So during the day, you cannot see them with those blessers. So they don't enjoy the privilege like other heterosexual individuals who can be with their blesser wherever they want to go. But because also the blessers don't want to be associated with LGBTIQ community, so they hide that relationship.
Wow.
Because I remember in one of my studies where one person was saying, there are lots of people, rich men, medical practitioners who want to engage sexually with LGBTIQ individuals. But during the day, they are the ones who act so discriminatory.
One thing that I found interesting, Professor, that you said is they, blessers offer some form of security, but they take away your freedom to movement. It's like it's a give and take, which is a transaction, disadvantaging a transaction. So do basadi ba ba leng mo di relationship it's so banally agency? Do they actually have a choice?
They don't have agency. And nobody is supporting them, except that they will just share with their fellow blessees to say, this is what happened. But nobody is doing anything about it. That's why when I concluded with my study, I was saying, because for now, having a blesser seems to be a refuge for the refugees, because that's the only protection they have. But you cannot say they should stop. So what is needed is to empower the blessees in the relationship to say, you are still yourself. And the issue of HIV in the process. So if you want to engage with the blesser, be assertive enough to say, if we have to continue in this relationship, because condom use is not an option.
That was my worry.
Yes,
you mentioned
it's not
HIV.
an option.
When you're blessed, I don't think you can describe or dictate to your blesser that you will use a condom. The blesser is the one who decides what kind of sex, where you're going to have the sex, and whether condoms are used or not.
Yes. So if maybe they can be brave enough, like, I want to be in the relationship with you, but let's first go and do couple counseling and testing so that we know each other's status. That will be protecting both the blessee and the blesser and the family. Because remember, the blessers are somebody's husbands, somebody's partner. And also to empower the blesser, because some blessers assume that the blessees are virgins. They are not HIV positive. So, but some of them have been engaged in the relationship before. Others have been raped on the way, especially the refugees. Others have been born with HIV. So when they're coming to them, they're also risking themselves. So it needs to be a multisectoral empowerment where both the blessers and the blessees should be empowered. It's not only issue of, because there's that age gap. In that relationship, there's a possibility of having a child because even family planning, some men will start to come with stories of saying the woman who's on family planning is watery, this and that, which will end up making that poor girl not to be in family planning and not utilizing the condom. And she'll fall pregnant, and the moment she's pregnant, she's dumped because a token woman should have a figure.
There's so much more we could speak about. Thank you very much for putting some light on this particular discussion. The main aspect that comes out is the power or the lack of power that is happening in these particular relationships.
Even the choice that is taken away from you as a woman. Roba Liwua, Prof. Coming up after the break, decriminalization of sex work.
Some people are talking decriminalization, some people are talking legalization. Do you have a particular take on any of these particular issues?
There's such a lot of problems and weaknesses in the criminal justice system.
Silence you, don't let them silence you.
Nginekhaya, nginomuzi, ngishadile futhi at the same time sex work because imali sex working iyafana nenye imali.
Ngiyakhona ukuyigqoka, gqokisana ingane yami. Yabo, I'm able to support a family member when mabe ngifonela bathi something came up, can you please do this and that through sex work. So yeah.
What are the misconceptions about sex work?
Into efika engqondweni abantu ukuthi ama-sex workers athanda ucansi, athanda ukudliwa, kanti kulo msebenzi wethu yes bakhona abantu abafuna ucansi. Omunye akazange ngokucansa, uhlutshwile emhluphileyo endlini. Eza sex working. Mayifika uzongithatha la ngithatha khona siya erumini lami. Asifika lapha yana umuntu uzovenda, uve ubuhlungu. Afika hlale nami angixoxele akhale and then ndimconsola ngalendlela ngikhosa besides sex.
Umuntu uzokucela nje just massage me, yabona ne-tension apha and stuff like that. Nihlale for an hour, after that akunika imali yakho for services rendered. So it's not always an exchange of sex. You know, it can be more.
What is difficult about umsebenzi wenu?
I'm a challenge from the client from the community, from kumaphoyisa. Kumaphoyisa ngithatha ngokuhlobo lokuthi mayibona laphayana iyakutarget, it's always you kun sex again. Akayazi ukuthi umele boyfriend yakho okanye umele bani, and then uyakuthatha ne mayekuthatha ukuvalela evenini asithi ukuthathe ngo7:30 uzozula nawe the whole night until azotshayisa ngo6 o'clock, and la masithi ukuthathe la eJogburg eyokulahle efurunageni and aqeda uyakukhumulisa, and then kunoku hamba unqa.
Are they aware ukuthi you ladies are sex workers?
They didn't know. It's only labantwana laba ngiba sengibakhulisile manje basebesesikolweni ukuthi I'm a sex worker, and they proud of me because our aunt usesikolweni singenabo abazali, and namanje nje sabaqhubekisa ukuthi maye esikolweni balale bedlile bagqoke bafane nabanye abantwana.
On my part, my family doesn't know. My family doesn't know. Yeah. It's just something I've been hiding. But bayabona ba lo muntu akaphangeli. Kodwa uyakwazi uzibhatalela irent, uyakwazi ukusoba abantwana esikolweni, uyakwazi uzityisa, uyakwazi uzinxiba.
So bacabangani?
I don't know. I've never been asked that question. They probably think I've got boyfriends that are supporting me. Yeah.
How can the decriminalization of sex work help you and your work on a daily basis?
Thina singabantu sex workers sihambe ebusuku sama kuma hotspot into ezininzi siyazibona but siyathula because we know ukuthi asikho emthethweni, because mawuye police station reporting wena bazokubuza ukuthi bufunani ngalaxesha pha. But if ungazidecriminalize uzokhona ukuthi sitheka ama-picture sikhonekitha namapolisa left and right ukuthi hey yena endaweni eso kunento eyenzakalayo asiboni kahle ukuthi kuso, but ugovernment yethu abafuna isidecriminalize asazi why, and then uthola uba ne-STI, and then ma uya eclinic unesi umtshela ukuthi umsebenzi wami ukuthi athi iza ne-boyfriend ukuthi no andina-boyfriend, umsebenzi wami into ethile, uzohamba yobiza usister se-next door hayi zomame nayo ke sex work.
This is my work, you know what I mean? So it's also going to create a community yethu ukuthi sivane better, you understand ukuthi ba-understand ukuthi le nto esiyenzayo.
We have been talking about different types of transactional relationships. Professor Kopanoratele joins us now to take the conversation just a little bit further. Welcome back, Prof.
Thank you, Kgomotso.
Hi, Prof. Nico here. How do men interact with sex workers?
It's as old as humanity. And the point about it is how do you as a society treat it in ways that are not facing up to the issue. The issue is it's there. Do you want it to go underground, which brings with it a lot of other problems, including sexual diseases.
Some people are talking decriminalization, some people are talking legalization. Do you have a particular take on any of these particular issues?
It seems that the better option would be decriminalization for a number of reasons. But basically, I mean, at the bottom of it is that people who are doing sex work should not be criminalized.
One of the biggest problems, as you would have seen in the insert, is about the police actually being exploitative of sex workers and completely unhelpful. That seems to be like adding to and compounding the issue, because police are supposed to be there to protect.
Our police men and women in this country, I mean, there's such a lot of problems and weaknesses in the criminal justice system. Precisely, I mean, the issue of decrim is to make the police get the fact that sex workers should not be criminalized, and so if you don't do that, you do what the one person in the clip, in the video, talks about, which is utola this one policeman, and it could be a lot of other policemen who do this, that they just basically exploit a woman and driving with her around Johannesburg or wherever the case may be for hours on end, just because they can do it. But also because when women report rape and they're not taken seriously. When they report all kinds of things, abuse from men, they're not taken seriously because, who cares? They are sex workers. And precisely because the police don't get it. And by the way, Kgomotso, I'm sure you understand, is that the problem here is our police many times, in my view anyway, are not up to the task. I'm not up to the task. Jacob Dlamini has just brought out a book, and he says something it's about apartheid policing, by the way, but he says something that I think is still applicable. It's a simple thing. Sometimes you confuse brutality with efficiency. So the apartheid police were brutal. They were not efficient. And that thing about that the police have to use might, have to use force, have to repress and dominate people is still with our police, instead of understanding the problem and solving it.
Thank you so much for joining us again, Professor Kopano. Next, we discuss some ideas on how we can make an impact or change the narrative. Stay tuned.
Don't let them silence you. Don't let them silence you.
Although it is currently illegal in South Africa, I personally believe that sex work is legitimate work. It's a polarizing discussion, and we're speaking to two different women with very different views. Joining us now is former Deputy Minister of Health and founder of Embrace Dignity, Mam Nozizwe Madlala-Rulage. Welcome to It's a Feminist Thing, Mam.
Good afternoon, Kgomotso and Thando.
Please help me understand, why are you in support of legalization versus decriminalization?
Embrace Dignity supports what is referred to as the equality law. This is an abolitionist position. We want the system of prostitution abolished. We do not want it legalized. And our approach, and this is informed by research, it's also informed by our experience, the lived experience of those in the sex industry who have survived, is that it needs to be abolished, and that we should focus on criminalizing only the demand and decriminalizing those selling sex, because they are actually victims of a system of patriarchy, a system of exploitation, a system of gender inequality. The law that we want, we would decriminalize them, because we think that, in fact, they should not be criminalized.
Yeah.
But we are saying the law must go after the demand. The law must go after those who are making a choice to exploit somebody else because they've got power, because they've got money. This particular law was pioneered in Sweden. And as you know, Sweden is a very progressive country. It's a feminist government. In fact, that's what they call themselves, that they are a feminist government. But they saw the system of prostitution within the ambit of gender-based violence. And that's why even here in South Africa, we're very happy that now, as a country, we're uniting to end violence against women. We are uniting to end gender-based violence. And that does include, in fact, that the police subject women to criminality and rape them. We want that to be addressed. The system in Sweden does address this, because the police begin to see those selling sex as allies. They help them identify those who are organized, who are pushing organized crime, who are pushing drugs. And then the system in Sweden, which we are talking about, then supports the woman because she's no longer criminalized.
Mam Nozizwe, do you mind elaborating on why you believe that selling sex inherently strips women of their dignity?
Okay, this is, as I said, a global issue. It's not just here in South Africa. And it has been shown that the sex trade is intricately linked to organized crime and human trafficking. So that is where the harms come from the fact that it is tied up with organized crime, and it is often also the driving factor for human trafficking. Here is the dehumanization, where it comes from. And we're hearing this directly from those who have survived the system of prostitution. They are telling us that when they get a client who wants to pay them for sex, and he is not satisfied, He then uses abusive language and blames them for the fact that he's not satisfied. And sometimes they are subjected to abuse. We know, for example, of a case in Durban where a sex buyer went and picked up a woman and she ended up dead in the cane fields. So there's a very serious violation of her rights. Also, the very fact that you are subjected to commodification of your body. You are also subjected to performing, in many instances, acts that you would not normally perform. All of this is very exploitative and harmful and abusive.
Do you not rather think that people have a choice to decide whether they want to use their bodies to transect or not? Does choice not matter?
We give them that choice, but we also say they must be given other choices. And the reason for this is that when we talk to them, they say to us, we did not wake up and decide that this is what we want to do, but it was the system itself that chose us. Many of them say, I wanted to be a nurse, I wanted to be a social worker, I wanted to be a lawyer, I wanted to be a professor. But all those opportunities were, I was denied all those opportunities when I dropped out of school because my parents couldn't afford it. So we are saying we are not going to take this choice away from them, but we're going to take the choice away from those who are buying sex because they are the ones who are exercising power and choice. They're using money to exploit a situation of vulnerability. So in actual fact, as a feminist, I'm very much in support of agency. What we're doing here is taking the agency away from the powerful, from the exploiter, and handing it to the woman so that she makes an informed choice. So if she does decide indeed that this is what she wants to do, we want a law that would allow her to do it. But at the same time, we are saying those who are perpetrating violence, who are exploiting her, for example, the sex buyer himself, most of the time, he is not really buying sex, but he's buying control. These women tell us that sex buyers often make them things that they would not ask their girlfriends or their wives to do. We also say that those who are pimping, because there's also pimping in the business. I know that some women are independent, but very few are independent. A lot of them who end up in the streets have been kicked out by brothel owners who actually had subjected them to debt bondage. That's another matter that I want to bring up. Those who are working in the brothels as such often find themselves being subjected to debt bondage. The brothel owner says, look, you're not making enough money here and you need to pay the rent. So they take control of the woman's possessions and they say, go out there into the street. So she's no longer doing it for herself. She's not doing it because she wants to, but she's doing it for the brothel owner. When I first got involved, I was very much in support of people making this choice if this is what they want to make. I have learned otherwise, having seen broken women who I have every day tried to support. I've helped a number of them who are broken, who have to deal with psychological and physical wounds. So it is from that experience that I think when we look at the law, we should target the demand and end the demand and support those who are in the industry to make informed choices.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights and sharing your views. And I think it's important for us to see both sides of the spectrum. Thank you, ma'am. We are now joined by Constance, who is currently the national coordinator of the ASJI Coalition for the Decriminalisation of Sex Work. Ma'am Constance, why decriminalisation versus legalisation?
We believe that the decriminalisation to protect the sex workers' rights, the human rights, because we are approaching it in the human rights way and the safe conditions for the sex workers. Legalization, we have seen the model working in the other countries that doesn't benefit for the sex workers at all. It only benefits the people in power, the people in law, because there is a restrictions, conditions that they are given in other countries So the legalization totally doesn't work for me and my fellow colleagues. So the decriminalization, it have shown and it have proven the records. Even those countries who adopted the models, it have shown that it is the way forward for the sex workers, because the sex work, we recognize it in the feminist approach as work. So it will recognize my occupation as an occupation, and I will be registered under the laws. Currently now, especially in South Africa, the challenge that we are facing is about the police brutality and the police harassment. The police have failed us several times. So we are trying to say, with the decriminalization, it's not that we're going to clean all the stigma and discrimination. It won't going to happen, but there will be some changes. As we can see what happened on the LGBTQI. Yeah. The LGBTQI is decriminalized now. So the stigma and discrimination is always there. But at least they've got access to the healthy facilities. They've got also an opportunity to stand up for their rights. They are also recognized by the laws of South Africa. Unlike currently now, sex work is criminalized, so we don't even being recognized by the law.
Can you tell us about what are the challenges that sex workers in South Africa face every day?
The challenges that we are facing in South Africa is the gender-based violence. That is currently happening to everyone, and it's not only based on sex workers, but we know there is monsters out there. There is murders, there is rapists. So this is the challenge that we are facing. The danger of the work, it's the nature and the danger of the work itself. For example, I'm working online. I'm on internet. I'm an internet sex worker. But that doesn't stop the gender-based violence. The people, they use their false identity online to approach me. And it's not every client that I see online who's coming for business. Some of them, they come to steal from me. They come to abuse and rape and all those kind of things. So the gender-based violence is all over, and the gender-based violence is happening. And the killings of women, especially the most victim of people, is the women. So this is the other challenge that we are facing. I'm being in the industry for the past 15 years. This is about my choice. I choose to be interested. Though I'm being employed by the Asijiki Coalition, I cannot quit my sex work because the money, the salary I'm earning here is not enough for the family that I have. I'm a Black African woman. I've got an extended family. So I have a lot of responsibilities on my head. So I will say most of us, we are in the industry. It's not an exploitation. It's my choice to be in the industry.
And Ma'am Constance, let's assume that sex work were to be decriminalized. What would the future of sex work in South Africa look like?
Using the organization techniques and also the power of the steering of an organization, they can hear the voice of the they can hear the voices of the sex workers, and there is that kind of a respect of the sex worker. But me as individual, as a sex worker, I cannot speak. But once it's been decriminalized, I've been opening and operating my own movement of the sex workers in the rural areas, because also people forgot we have sex workers in the rural areas. So there will be a freedom, and there will be also recognized sex workers. They will be able, even in the rural areas, in the farm workers, to explore their sexual life and also explore the sexual industry. We are being silenced.
Yes. You know, Ma'am Constance, I think it's interesting that you mention sex work in the rural areas. Historically, women have been excluded from all types of job opportunities and have been relegated to staying in the rural areas and not having any opportunity to earn their own income and to own their own sense of agency when it comes to making money. So thank you so much for shedding some light on that. Thank you for joining us and providing a more nuanced understanding of sex work within the South African context.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me.
After the break,
I think the attempt to legislate any kind of sex work is ridiculous.
Don't let them silence you.
I think we can all agree that sex work should either be decriminalized or legalized, but it certainly cannot remain illegal. What is our way forward?
Stop policing other people's bodies. And I think the attempt to legislate any kind of sex work is ridiculous.
When you are sitting in a position of privilege, you sort of make yourself judge of what is moral, what is immoral, what is, you know, and I've always really struggled with that. But I've come to realize that everybody has a choice. Everybody must be allowed their choice. The constitution of the country has given all of us the same choice that I have to say I'm going to be this type of a person. Is the choice that anybody has. And why should my choice then be, you know, above everybody else's? So it's liberating to actually realize that, Afina, you can't be centering yourself in people's lives. Because we worry about, why is she choosing this? Why not this, you know? And centering ourselves is a problem. And I'm liberated.
I have two takeaways from today's episode, you know. Firstly, that transactional relationships and sex work are two different things, right? Because transactional relationship sort of has a premise on monogamy, right? There's an intimate sexual relationship that exists there, but that also, it doesn't just boil down to, you know, choice versus coercion. We need to allow for nuance to understand that, you know, people will really negotiate the terms of their own relationship. And on the sex work end, it's that, you know, people are not always forced into sex work because they don't have any other choice, as Constance has said. You know, some women choose this form of trade.
Yeah, I'm very resolute and angjigi. It has to be decriminalization of sex work and nothing else. For me, the idea of it being illegal and legalization is an absolute betrayal of our constitution and our constitutional democracy. And, you know, when there was a mention of rural women being sex workers, it really made me think outside of the box of what a sex worker looks like and the configuration. The truth is, there's no one way even to be a sex worker. You know, we all think of this woman that stands at the middle of the night on the street corner. And the truth is that in the rural area, that's not even how rural areas are configured. So not all sex workers look the same. So the next thing that comes to my mind then is, what is the future of sex work? And what I want to see are potentially pay slips or mandatory pay slips or receipts after your job has been done. I want to see things like unions being established, legal regulatory bodies that will ensure the safety of these women's bodies or any person, any human being's body who's participating in sex work. I also want to see, from a legal and justice perspective, the creation of very specific delictual or criminal actions that a person can be able to pursue should they be hurt at the workplace and on the job, or should someone violate them criminally. I found in the conversations that there were some blurred lines and there was some confusion between sex trafficking and sex slavery, as well as, you know, people exercising their autonomy to be sex workers. You know, we must make it very clear that sex work is a consensual thing. And when it gets to the point where people are being abused, people are being hurt, people are being trafficked, then it's no longer that. It's something totally different.
Consent is the big thing. And also being of age. Essentially being able, I suppose when you say consent, and you mean like somebody who's able legally to be able to consent. Have a look at the PSA to see what we'll be discussing next time.
They told us no one would believe us. They said it's their word against mine. They said it's just girls' talk. But girl talk can build movements. From South Africa to Senegal, from India to Iceland, girls have started to talk. Our stories transcend race, culture, social status. Our languages are different, but our stories are all the same. All around the world, girls have started talking, breaking the silence, challenging the patriarchy, and finding the power to speak out, speak up, and be heard. All around the world, women are saying, I hear you, girl. Me too. Oh, Me too.
Join us next week as we delve into the world of social media. Why have victims and survivors of sexual violence resorted to naming and shaming perpetrators online? And what are the repercussions of this? We discuss that next week. In the meanwhile, be kind to one another. Until then, stay well.